The night highway stretched endlessly, a black ribbon cutting through the wilderness of northern Wyoming. Jake Turner had been driving for 23 hours, his eyes stinging from the glow of headlights and the rhythmic sweep of his wipers across the windshield. The storm had rolled in fast, smearing the sky with bruised clouds that pressed low against the earth. He'd hauled freight for 15 years, long enough to know that the road always demanded a price. Some paid in wrecks, others in loneliness. Jake feared he was paying insanity, the edges of his mind worn thin from too many hours chasing yellow lines. His radio sputtered with static, the kind that seemed almost intentional, like someone whispering in a frequency just beyond hearing. He smacked the dashboard, muttering, then tried to focus on the road. Mile markers slid past like tally marks on a prison wall. That's when he noticed the headlights behind him. 2 beams. Close. Too close. He gripped the wheel tighter. Out here, a tailgater in the middle of a storm wasn't just reckless, it was suspicious. He reached for his CB, hoping to warn whoever was back there, but the channel was dead, nothing but a hollow hiss. The car behind him kept its distance, never passing, never falling back. Just there. Watching. Jake's chest tightened as he adjusted his mirrors, trying to catch a glimpse of the driver. All he saw was black glass, no face, no features, just the wet gleam of headlights that refused to leave him alone. After 30 miles of this silent pursuit, Jake pulled into a truck stop, its neon sign flickering like a dying star. He parked under the canopy, heart pounding, and waited. The car never followed. It disappeared, as if swallowed by the storm. Inside the diner, the air smelled of grease and burnt coffee. A waitress with tired eyes poured him a cup without asking. "Rough night," she said, and Jake tried to laugh, but it came out flat. He told her about the car, the strange persistence of it. Her face paled just slightly, though she tried to hide it. "Truckers around here talk about that," she murmured. "Lights that follow. Some say it's just locals messing with outsiders. Others," she trailed off, pressing her lips together. Jake leaned closer, uneasy. "Others what?" he asked. She glanced at the empty diner, then at him. "Others say it's not a car at all." Jake chuckled, forcing bravado he didn't feel. But when he left the diner, coffee still bitter on his tongue, his truck felt colder inside than it should have. He checked his mirrors before pulling out, the rain easing into mist. The highway yawned open before him, silent and waiting. And then, as his rig rumbled back into motion, 2 beams of light appeared in the darkness once again, sliding into place behind him. Always behind him. Always waiting. Miles. Jake tried to tell himself it was fatigue, the kind that tricks your mind into seeing patterns where none exist. He'd been down this road before, hallucinations, the creeping paranoia of long hauls. Still, as the 2 beams followed his truck through the mist, the knot in his stomach tightened. Every time he pressed the accelerator, they adjusted. Every time he eased up, they mirrored him. He cracked the window for fresh air, but all he got was the damp smell of asphalt and rain. Somewhere between mile marker 242 and 258, he realized he hadn't seen another vehicle heading the opposite way. No semis. No cars. Just him and the lights. The CB crackled unexpectedly, making him jolt. A distorted voice bled through, "Keep driving." Jake's hand froze on the mic. "Who is this?" he demanded, his voice steadier than he felt. Static swallowed the words, then silence. He switched channels, flipping through frequencies, but the airwaves were dead. When he finally looked back into the mirror, the headlights were closer now, too close. The beams filled his cab with white glare, washing over his dashboard until his instruments blurred. Desperate for answers, Jake pulled off at a rest area. His trailer rattled as he downshifted, pulling into the lot's emptiness. The lights behind him slowed but never turned in. Instead, they idled at the shoulder, just beyond the glow of the lot's single buzzing street lamp. Jake climbed down from his cab, boots splashing in shallow puddles, and shielded his eyes against the rain. He could barely make out the silhouette of a car, black, sleek, unremarkable. Yet, something was wrong. There was no engine noise. No sound at all, except the patter of rain and the blood in his ears. He approached cautiously, step by step, his nerves coiling tighter. Then, with a blink, the headlights winked out, vanishing into blackness. The car was gone. Jake froze mid-step, breath catching, scanning the shoulder. Empty. Nothing but fog hugging the asphalt. He backed away slowly, heart hammering, then climbed into his truck, locking the doors out of instinct. For several minutes, he sat in the cab, headlights off, watching the darkness. When he finally turned the key, the dashboard lights flickered strangely, as though the truck itself resisted starting. The engine coughed, then roared to life. Jake pulled back onto the highway, forcing his focus on the wet blacktop. The road stretched ahead, empty. For once, there were no headlights in his mirrors. But as he passed mile marker 259, a whisper, low and drawn out, leaked from the CB again, "Keep driving." Jake's grip on the wheel tightened until his knuckles burned white. He kept his eyes glued to the road, daring himself not to look in the mirrors. Still, curiosity gnawed at him, and when he finally glanced back, his stomach dropped. 2 headlights had returned, glimmering faintly in the mist. They weren't far behind. He slammed his fist against the wheel, cursing under his breath. He knew he hadn't imagined it at the rest stop. He'd walked right up to the damn car, seen it vanish. Yet here it was again, like a predator toying with its prey. The CB hissed softly, an undercurrent to the low hum of his engine. Jake ignored it, but the whispering rose, garbled words, phrases stretched thin, like voices underwater. He thought he heard his name once, distorted but clear enough to twist his gut. He shut the radio off entirely, but the cab felt smaller without it, as though silence left more room for something else to creep in. He cranked up his heater, though the sweat dripping down his back told him it wasn't the cold making him shiver. A road sign appeared ahead, its reflective paint slicing the darkness. Mile 272, rest stop 2 miles. Jake squinted, uneasy. There wasn't supposed to be another rest stop this soon. He'd studied this route 1,000 times over. He slowed, wary but compelled, watching the new turnoff emerge from the fog. Its entrance was lined with bent, rusting poles, no light to welcome travelers. Still, he couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, someone there could explain what was happening. The rest stop parking lot yawned wide and empty, its cracked asphalt buried in weeds. Jake pulled in cautiously, headlights sweeping across a row of abandoned vending machines. The air here felt heavier, as if the fog thickened on purpose. He set the brake, climbed down, and listened. No insects. No wind. Just silence. When he circled back toward the vending machines, he froze. In the glass reflection of one broken machine, he saw himself, and just behind, 2 glowing headlights, hovering where his truck should have been. Jake spun around. Nothing. His truck sat silent in the gloom, alone. His breathing turned shallow, pulse hammering in his temples. He backed away, forcing himself into the cab again. He slammed the door shut, locking it twice, then dared one last glance at the mirror. The headlights weren't on the highway anymore. They were in the lot. Closer now. Much closer. Jake sat frozen in the cab, the engine rumbling beneath him like a nervous heartbeat. His mirrors showed the impossible, those headlights creeping closer across the cracked lot, not rolling on wheels but gliding, silent, steady. Every instinct screamed at him to floor the accelerator and get back on the highway, but something held him still. He needed proof, some anchor to convince himself he wasn't unraveling. He fumbled for his phone, snapped a picture, and checked the screen. The image chilled him to the bone. His truck appeared clear as day, but where the headlights should have been, there were 2 glowing orbs floating in the mist, like eyes staring straight at him. Jake's hand trembled as he shoved the phone back into his pocket. He hit the ignition hard, the rig roaring to life, and swung the truck out of the lot. Gravel spat against his trailer as he shot back onto the highway. His pulse hammered in rhythm with the tires pounding over wet asphalt. The mirrors were black for a moment, mercifully black, until the glow returned, sliding into place behind him like a loyal shadow. This time, though, it felt different. Closer. Hungrier, the cab grew stifling, the air thick and damp, as though the fog had seeped inside. Jake wiped his forehead and glanced at the passenger seat. His gut lurched. Someone sat there. A figure in a dripping hood, head bowed, water pooling at its feet. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't heard the door open. He hadn't felt the weight shift the cab. Yet there it was, motionless, as if it had been riding with him the whole time. That he reached instinctively for the tire iron tucked behind his seat, but when his eyes darted back, the seat was empty. The damp imprint of a body remained, pressed into the leather. His heart pounded so loud it drowned out the engine. He couldn't trust his senses anymore. Were the lights behind him real? Was the passenger real? His hands shook against the wheel, every nerve screaming to keep moving forward. Ahead, a green exit sign emerged from the fog. Gas, 1 mile. Jake clung to it like salvation. Civilization. People. Witnesses. He flicked his turn signal, desperate for the sight of neon and chatter. But in the mirror, the headlights surged closer now, blinding, flooding his cab with white light. Jake squinted into the glare, teeth gritted. That's when he realized, he couldn't hear the engine anymore. Not his, not theirs. Just silence. And in the silence, a whisper crawled up from the passenger seat, "You shouldn't have stopped." Jake veered hard onto the exit ramp, his trailer shuddering behind him as the tires bit into wet pavement. The green sign promised gas, and maybe salvation, but as he descended the ramp, he noticed something wrong. No glow of fuel station lights, no neon flicker, no cluster of passing cars. Just a stretch of cracked asphalt leading into the dark. He swallowed hard, fingers clenching the wheel, but forced himself to keep going. Anything was better than staying on the highway with it behind him. The road wound into a hollow lined with skeletal trees, their limbs clawing at the fog. His high beams cut across a row of structures, half standing, abandoned. Gas pumps stood in front of a rusted canopy, their hoses dangling like nooses. The convenience store was boarded up, windows smashed, graffiti scarring the walls. This wasn't salvation. It was a graveyard. Still, Jake killed the engine and sat in the silence, forcing his breath to slow. For a few precious seconds, he thought he'd shaken it. The mirrors were dark, then came the sound. Not an engine. Not tires. A low hum that vibrated the very frame of his truck, as if the air itself was alive. Jake turned slowly, dread pooling in his chest. The headlights were back, too close this time, impossibly close. They weren't on the road anymore. They floated in the air, just beyond his windshield, flooding the cab with their blinding glow. He shielded his face, swore under his breath, and reached for the ignition. Nothing. The key turned, but the truck refused to start. A cold draft swept through the cab, though every window was shut. Jake's breath fogged the air, his chest tightening as the passenger seat creaked under invisible weight. He turned his head, slowly, against every instinct, and saw a figure materialize. Not fully, but enough. A pale face beneath the dripping hood, skin stretched thin, eyes glowing faint like dying embers. Its mouth opened soundlessly, yet the words echoed inside Jake's skull, "Keep driving." Jake screamed, fumbling for the tire iron. He swung it across the passenger seat, hitting nothing but air. The figure dissolved like mist, leaving only water dripping onto the floor mat. In the mirrors, the headlights flickered once, then cut out entirely. Darkness swallowed the truck stop. Jake sat trembling, tire iron clenched in both hands, his heart pounding in the void. For the first time, he realized, he wasn't running from something on the road. He was carrying it with him. Jake's hands shook as he jammed the key into the ignition again. The truck groaned, sputtered, then roared alive as if nothing had been wrong at all. His heart hammered, his skin damp with cold sweat. He didn't waste a second, threw it into gear and peeled out of the lot, the rig's headlights slicing through the mist. He didn't look in the mirrors. He couldn't. The memory of that pale face, dripping and whispering in his head, was enough to push him forward. The road back to the highway should have been simple. Just a short ramp, a curve, and then the wide blacktop of I-90 stretching east and west. But as Jake drove, the ramp seemed to stretch unnaturally long. The fog thickened, swallowing his beams. The trees pressed closer, their skeletal limbs scraping the trailer like claws. His GPS blinked, spinning, the digital map a tangled mess of blank roads and dead ends. The highway never came. The CB flickered alive again, a voice like static-drenched gravel spilling through. "Keep driving." Jake slammed the radio off, but the voice didn't stop. It was inside the cab now, crawling through his skull. His grip on the wheel faltered, sweat stinging his eyes. He pressed the accelerator, the engine howling as the speedometer climbed. But the road didn't change. Same mile markers. Same clawing trees. Same curve repeating endlessly, as though he were trapped in some looping reel of film. Panic clawed up Jake's throat. He grabbed the tire iron again, as if brute force could fight whatever had trapped him. "You're not real," he shouted, voice cracking in the claustrophobic cab. But as he said it, the mirrors bloomed with light. The headlights had returned, closer than ever, filling every reflective surface until it seemed the entire truck was swallowed in white glare. He swung the iron at the glass, shattering the passenger mirror with a violent crack. For a moment, the lights vanished, and the road cleared. Jake panted, trembling, his hand bleeding from the shattered glass. Relief swelled in his chest, until he noticed something impossible. The broken mirror still reflected him, perfectly intact, his face pale and gaunt. And behind his reflection, sitting in the passenger seat, was the hooded figure. This time, its lips moved. And Jake heard it, clear and sharp in his ears: "The road belongs to us." Jake's lungs burned as he tried to steady his breath. The broken mirror still gleamed with that impossible reflection, himself, pale and hollow-eyed, sitting beside the hooded figure. He tore his gaze away, but the damage was done. The cab no longer felt like a truck. It felt like a coffin. The air was thick with moisture, fog seeping from the seams of the doors, curling around his legs like cold fingers. Every hum of the engine vibrated wrong, too low, too deep, as if the sound belonged to something alive. The seatbelt across his chest tightened suddenly, snapping him back against the seat. Jake choked, clawing at the strap, but it pinned him hard. From the corner of his eye, the passenger seat dipped under weight again. The figure was there now, solid, water dripping from its hooded face, pooling on the floor mat. Its skin was waxy and bloated, veins blue and stretched beneath translucent flesh. The eyes glowed faintly, and when its head tilted toward him, Jake felt an icy pressure in his skull, a voice without sound: "You are already dead on this road." Rage flared through his fear. Jake yanked the tire iron free, gritting his teeth as the seatbelt cut into his ribs. He swung blind, striking across the passenger side. The iron tore through mist, but connected with something solid. The figure let out a soundless shriek, its head snapping back, water spraying across the dashboard. The belt loosened instantly. Jake scrambled forward, slamming the wheel to keep control of the rig as it swerved. The figure dissolved into vapor, but not before leaving its mark. The windshield was smeared with handprints, long and thin, pressing outward from the inside. They lingered, glowing faintly before fading back into the glass. Jake wiped his face, his breath ragged, heart battering his ribs. He thought, for a desperate second, he'd won. Until he noticed the passenger seat again. The figure hadn't vanished entirely. It had shifted. It now sat directly beside him, closer, shoulder brushing his own. Jake's body went rigid. He felt the dampness seeping into his sleeve, cold as ice water. Slowly, against his will, his head turned. The hooded thing leaned in, face inches from his own, and whispered with a mouth that moved too slowly, like film played at the wrong speed, "Drive deeper." Jake's knuckles whitened around the wheel, his whole body trembling as the figure's cold presence pressed against him. His instinct screamed to leap from the cab, to abandon the truck entirely, but he knew that was suicide. Out there was nothing but fog and headlights that stalked him no matter where he turned. He needed to fight, to drive, to survive. With a roar, he slammed the tire iron through the dashboard. Sparks burst, plastic cracked, and the cab filled with the sharp stench of burning wires. The figure flickered, as if the violence of his defiance shook it. The truck shuddered beneath him, headlights dimming, but the rig still held momentum. He leaned on the accelerator, barreling down the endless stretch of road. The figure lashed out now, pale hands gripping the wheel with inhuman strength. Jake wrestled it, muscles straining, veins bulging in his neck. The truck fishtailed wildly, trailer swaying, tires screaming on wet pavement. For a moment, he thought he'd lose it, that the rig would flip and crush him, but adrenaline sharpened his reflexes, and he wrenched the wheel free. The figure dissolved in a spray of mist again, vanishing into the passenger seat. The CB crackled back to life, louder than ever, a chorus of voices all whispering the same command: "Keep driving. Keep driving. Keep driving." Jake ripped the unit from its mount and hurled it against the floor, but the voices didn't stop. They filled the cab, the air, his head, until he felt them vibrating in his bones. He shouted over them, spittle flying, "I'm not your damn puppet." He slammed the accelerator flat, determined to outrun whatever hell had locked him here. The speedometer climbed past 80. 90. The rig thundered like a beast, rattling with every bump. The fog parted in sudden gusts, revealing flashes of something new: rows of trucks abandoned on the roadside, their doors hanging open, their headlights forever burning. Jake's stomach twisted. He knew without being told, other drivers had been here. And none had left. Their rigs were tombs, their wheels forever stuck on this cursed road. Jake's vision blurred with tears and sweat as he gripped the wheel tighter. He wasn't going to be one of them. Not tonight. He spotted a break ahead, what looked like a bridge spanning black water, the fog swirling above it like smoke. If the road looped, if this was a trap, then maybe smashing through whatever held him here was the only way. He clenched his jaw, braced himself, and barreled toward the bridge at full throttle. The rig thundered forward, its headlights spearing the fog as the bridge rose ahead like some skeletal beast waiting to devour him. The black water beneath glimmered faintly, a mirror reflecting nothing but darkness. Jake's jaw locked tight, sweat stinging his eyes. He pressed harder on the accelerator, feeling the truck's frame groan as though it too feared what lay ahead. The steering wheel vibrated under his hands, alive, resisting him with every mile. The passenger seat groaned again. The figure was back, no longer faint, no longer mist. It sat solid now, flesh sagging and dripping onto the floor mat, the hood clinging to its skull. Its head turned toward him with mechanical slowness, jaw opening wider than bone should allow. The voice wasn't in Jake's head this time. It poured out, ragged and wet, echoing through the cab, "You do not leave." Jake screamed, the sound raw, primal, as the truck veered onto the bridge. The hooded figure lunged, skeletal hands snapping around his throat. Cold shot down his spine as nails dug into his flesh, crushing his windpipe. His vision swam, headlights splitting into halos. But rage boiled in him, stronger than fear. He wrenched one hand free, grabbed the tire iron, and drove it into the figure's face. The hood collapsed inward, skin bursting into spray. The entity shrieked, a sound that shattered glass, the windshield spiderwebbing with cracks. The rig fishtailed across the bridge, steel rails groaning on either side. In the mirrors, the endless headlights multiplied, hundreds of pairs now, floating, swarming, converging on him from the fog. Jake's heart pounded as the bridge seemed to stretch impossibly long, no end in sight. His truck roared like a beast unleashed, trailer rattling violently, tires smoking against wet pavement. The bridge shook as though it might collapse under the weight of something not of this world. Then, for a single, breathless moment, he saw it, the far side. A ramp, faint but real, leading up out of the fog. Salvation. Jake's grip tightened on the wheel. His vision narrowed to a tunnel, the figure still twitching beside him, dissolving into mist but clawing to hold on. He spat blood, voice hoarse, and shouted into the storm, "Then I'll take you with me." He floored the accelerator, engine screaming as the headlights closed in from every angle, threatening to swallow the bridge whole. The truck screamed across the bridge, every bolt rattling, every panel vibrating as if it were ready to split apart. The headlights behind him pressed closer, swarming in a wall of blinding white that swallowed everything but the faint glow of the far ramp. Jake's throat throbbed where the figure had gripped him, every breath raw and wet. The hooded thing was half mist now, half flesh, twitching and reforming in the seat beside him, clawing at the wheel with fingers that bled water instead of blood. The bridge groaned under their weight. Steel cables snapped overhead with gunshot cracks, whipping into the fog. Jake's chest burned, adrenaline flooding his veins. He knew he couldn't hold much longer. He raised the tire iron again, slamming it into the wheel column, sparks spitting, smoke filling the cab. The entity shrieked, flailing, its form unraveling with every strike. Its hood peeled back, revealing hollow sockets burning with faint light. The voice boomed through the cab, deeper now, many voices layered as one, "You cannot leave the road." Jake's vision tunneled. The ramp was there, closer now. He locked both hands on the wheel, the tire iron clattering to the floor. "Watch me," he spat, his voice cracked but fierce. He floored the accelerator, every ounce of strength poured into forward momentum. The entity lunged one last time, wrapping around him like a wet shroud, pressing into his skin, into his lungs, suffocating. His scream merged with the roar of the engine as the truck shot off the bridge. For an instant, everything dissolved into white light. The cab shook violently, air ripped from his chest, headlights devoured him whole. Then, silence. Jake blinked. His hands clutched the wheel. His throat was clear. The passenger seat was empty. He was driving. The fog was gone. The highway stretched straight and endless beneath a sky breaking into dawn. In his mirrors, nothing followed. Not headlights. Not shadows. Nothing. Jake laughed, broken, disbelieving, as the rising sun painted the road in gold. But the sound caught in his throat when he noticed the mile marker ahead. 272, the same sign. The same number. The laugh died in his chest, replaced with a hollow, crushing silence. His truck rumbled steady, the road humming beneath him. And as he glanced at the passenger seat, he saw water dripping onto the floor mat, one drop at a time.